Guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm super excited to have a special guest with me today, Yuri from NANO.
Hey guys, this is Yuri from NANO. I flew in all the way from New York to Miami to meet with one of my close friends and colleagues, Denis from Media Components. Today we have an exciting podcast. We're going to discuss marketing strategies. We're going to discuss artificial intelligence. We're going to get a deep dive into e-commerce and how to grow your business. So stay tuned. A lot of information is coming your way. And I wanted to express a special thank you to Denis and his team for hosting us today.
So Yuri, right now with this whole trend of e-commerce, and people after the COVID change their mindset where they go to get products and services, e-commerce is really on the forefront of the news. And your agency specializing in e-commerce products. What has been the main tech stack and some of the tools and strategies that you employ and recommend to your customers? Let's get into a little bit of the technical verbiage for the viewers so you can give us a couple pointers. If a brand is looking to scale up, if a brand or retailer is looking and thinking about going online into e-commerce, what's the best way to jump in?
COVID definitely changed a lot of mindsets for the consumers to truly welcome, the convenience of e-commerce, right? Obviously, the marketplaces like Amazon has been around for quite some time. They've definitely spoiled the audience of getting products delivered fast and efficiently. And although there's, several million Amazon sellers, we're still big believers that an e-commerce brand should have its own entity. The number one reason is so that they can own the customer database, right? Because you get to connect with the customers, you get to build a relationship, you can sell them, you can service them for as long as they need your products. Shopify today is our preference of choice for a platform. One of many reasons besides, phenomenal user experience. Shopify continues to create and add partnerships into its network. And they continue to grow and expand their capabilities so that they give enough tools to their merchants to generate a lot of business.
I completely agree with you. With Media Components, my agency, we kind of jumped all into the Shopify ecosystem, and we're developing websites for local brands, for retailers, for informational products using Shopify as well. But what I like about Shopify is the ecosystem and the community. Whenever we install a Shopify app, it says trusted and preferred by Shopify. We can be rest assured that when we install this app, it's secured, it's trusted by Shopify, it's not going to bug out. There's no update that needs to happen. That's the best part about Shopify, is that when you install this SaaS product, you don't need to worry about plugin updates. You don't need to worry about security. The other thing I like about Shopify is the Shopify payments. Since millions and millions of websites use Shopify and they purchase a lot of high-end products, Shopify already knows these customers and they run it through their fraudulent algorithm. So you can rest assured that whenever you take a credit card, if the Shopify makes it a valid transaction, you're not going to get a chargeback. You're not going to get a fraudulent.
Phenomenal point. Shopify, like as I mentioned, right, they create partnerships and they create their own processes and policies to prevent things like fraudulent transactions, even applications and plugins. Like we've built a number of plugins that we contributed to the Shopify stores. And Shopify has recently, I'd say the last couple of years, tightened up their security and their vetting process for when you're submitting products into the app store. Because your app needs to live within Shopify's ecosystem. They no longer allow external apps to live in the system. This way you don't get hacked, your information doesn't get stolen, and you could, like you said, right, like updates and being certain that the products that you're using within the Shopify ecosystem will not harm your business, and that you could take full advantage and get all the benefits.
Yeah, the other point that I love about Shopify is that you really don't need to be a system administrator to manage the server, manage the security, manage the cloud components. You can get an instance of Shopify, whether it's professional or enterprise, and that's what Shopify is great at. They have their own backend systems and administrators where they're in charge of the security and uptime. What we do as an agency, and I'm sure you do, is worry about the strategy. How are you going to drive qualified traffic into the store, right? When it comes to strategy, that seems to be a big component of your marketing when you partner up with clients.
Correct.
What's the first couple steps that you recommend to a new client when they're thinking about e-commerce?
So are we talking about startups or are we talking about an established?
Let's say I have a brick and mortar store and I'm selling custom hats.
Sure.
I'm thinking about jumping in and going worldwide and ship, let's say nationwide first.
Sure.
Why would I go with Shopify versus WordPress versus Amazon versus eBay?
So a couple of things. Picking the right stack, the tech stack is very important, right? It's your strategy dictates the technology you would choose rather than technology dictating your strategy, which is very often being made as a mistake. If you're selling hats, if you're a retail location business, you have to make a decision. Can you ship nationally, right? Some businesses like furniture stores can ship nationally, but it's a lot harder. Things like buying a couch is a little bit more difficult online than buying a hat, right? So strategically, you want to make a decision of how will your business serve the customer at the end of the sale, right? And so going back to hats are lightweight. They don't get damaged in transition, so it should be fairly inexpensive to ship them. Hats have the potential to be a global distribution, right? You could absolutely start local, national, and then international. And so for things like that, Shopify is phenomenal. Shopify allows you to spin up a website pretty quick, right? Back in the day, you had to go through this entire design process and development process and create and find a hosting provider and find all these tools and plugins to take payments. This is all shrunk today to as little as you essentially could jumpstart a Shopify store over a weekend, right? Obviously, it's for if it's a small business and low budget, you could pick a template, pick a plan, and off you go, right? In recent news, Shopify just released a new AI agent that allows customers to dictate the theme that they want to create. So you no longer need to just stick to the default templates. You can actually have an agent design you a template. Now, we don't recommend that for bigger brands or more established businesses. This is more for people who have small startups that just want to get to the market and test the waters, so to say. Shopify allows you to put up your inventory, put up all your pictures. Now you have an AI agent that will help you write product descriptions, and it'll even help you generate improvements of any photography that you're going to upload for the product. So technically, you can jump off a hat store over a weekend, right? But as the wise men say, just because you build it doesn't mean they'll come. And
so this is where the agency would come in. You would build a strategy and select which channels they need to market in.
Right. So foundationally, if your store is built, you have the right presence, you have good presentation, product data is super important, right? Especially for marketing. If I had to give anybody any advice, focus a lot on product data enrichment, meaning describe the product really well, describe the use of this product, case scenarios, all the features, all the benefits, right? So that not only does it work well with people that are trying to shop it, this data will essentially help your marketing channels find the right people, okay? And so phase one is foundational, right? It's how you look, it's how you present yourself. Phase two, the next strategy is where do you distribute the channels. And the beauty part about Shopify integrates with everybody. Google, Meta, TikTok, and so on and so forth. And so if you have really good product data, you could feed it straight into these channels and marketplaces, and then let AI systems figure out the audience that matches the products you're trying to sell.
Exactly. I completely agree with you about the product enrichment. And Shopify has an app you can install, which will automatically synchronize to Google Shopping, to Facebook Marketplace, to TikTok Shop. You just have to properly set up the data, make sure there's no inconsistencies, and categorize inconsistencies when you export the data. So if you can spend more time and invest more time and effort into writing the right descriptions, writing the right attributes, structuring the data, as you mentioned, is one of the most crucial things.
Right.
And once you have the data, then you'll have more success driving traffic for people searching that data, or searching a black hat or a leather sofa. So if you properly structure it with as much detail as possible, that's where it comes in. So what's the next layer of the strategy that you recommend?
The strategy for picking technology and channels and where you distribute, and then there's the holistic strategy of who are you truly serving. One of the big mistakes many customers make, or many brands make, is that they don't truly understand who their customer is. So identifying who the customer is, right? Who wears hats today, right? Why do they wear a hat? When is it appropriate to wear a hat? And where do these people hang out that buy hats, right? So understanding your user personas, understanding your customers, in my opinion, is the hardest part of building a strategy, right? Which requires a lot of data mining and research, A/B testing, obviously, across marketing channels. Once you figure out the right type of customer you're trying to serve, you can start adjusting your messaging, your visuals, and the presentation of what you're pitching to these clients.
You're talking about finding the market fit, and
Correct.
then doing the market research and doing the A/B testing to see what resonates with the right community. So I think that's an important factor.
Yep. So as a product market fit, what's an interesting way of finding information today? You and I earlier spoke about this new platform that's been kind of blowing up called Reddit, right? And Reddit reminds me very much of MySpace back in the day, when people would just hang out and have conversations and share information. And Reddit created this beautiful thing called subreddits, which is essentially categorization of specific topics. And as marketers, we love segmentation, right? So if you know that somebody is into fashion and there's a fashion subreddit, spending some time reading comments, reading conversations, getting involved in conversations, and even going as deep as asking questions. Hey, I'm a brand designer of hats, and I want to know your opinion on a particular style or a particular design. And you could truly ask the public, and the public will give you feedback.
Right.
This is real, unedited feedback from real people. Marketing agencies in the past would have to spend tens of thousands of dollars on doing market research and doing interviews. Today, you go to the internet, you go to the source,
Right.
and have people feed you back information. And now if people say, this is the ugliest hat of my life,
Right.
you should never sell it, well then you just saved yourself a ton of money on manufacturing.
That's a great point. Reddit is a great resource. A lot of times when we do market research, we also dive into other websites like Facebook, for example. Facebook groups in general is really the leader for communities. Reddit is a little bit kind of alternative, underground type of websites. It's a little bit raw, but Facebook is still mainstream. So when we do the market research, we dive into Facebook groups.
Dennis, let me just actually, while I have your attention, this is a perfect time for me to ask you. You're an SEO expert. Okay, there's a big thing happening with e-commerce. I think a lot of people ignore SEO for e-commerce. So what are your strategies? What are some tactics that people should be applying in their e-commerce? Because generally, people think about SEO, they think about, oh, I'm a service provider, or I have a blog, I have this information. And then e-commerce has been generally ignored over many years that I've been in business. People truly they second guess SEO. How do you feel about SEO for e-commerce? Is there a difference in e-commerce versus, let's say a service provider? And
So
give us some pointers, give us some advice.
So Yuri, when it comes to Shopify and e-commerce as a CEO, when we're building the site, we're considering several important factors. Number one is obviously the sitemap. We want to make sure the site is structured properly. Number two is the content, right? What content is on site that search engines will pick up? That's a very important factor. Number three is when we're considering AI, what are people are going to AI for? They're usually asking questions. So that's why a lot of times we create a section which is FAQ, frequently asked questions. We do a little bit of a keyword research and we craft the questions, what problem will this product solve for people? And we ask it and then we put the answer.
So you're kind of tricking the system essentially, because people are going into Google generally and searching for certain questions, right? Similarly, the same behavior is happening now in the chatbots, right? Like ChatGPT, you're coming in and you're speaking.
We're kind of tricking the system, but a lot of the SEO has to do with a lot of the keyword research. Which keywords are people searching for? And we check the volume. So if people are searching for this keyword most frequently, we include this keyword on site. When we're talking about off-site SEO, when it comes to link building, digital PR, that's a very important factor. And we currently partner up with many PR resources where they have a high domain authority. We can buy a link or buy a story and link back to the Shopify website, and then builds up the SEO signals and it ranks the website higher. But the latest strategy is what we utilize is the content, the visual, the video content which we upload to YouTube, for example, which actually educates the consumer about the product that they're going to buy, and then we'll link it back to the website, so in the description. So as you know, YouTube is number 2 search engines still until ChatGPT overtakes that, and creating
we'll see about that.
creating content which will live on YouTube, whether it's an educational video, whether it's an influencer talking about the product. Most times people just want to watch a video, they want to learn about the product, and then when they're ready to consume, when they're ready to buy, they click over to the shopping cart website. So I think those several factors are important when considering e-commerce SEO.
So would you say that optimizing an e-commerce store for search engine optimization is the same, similar, or different than optimizing it for, let's say, like a service provider, let's say like a law firm or a medical office?
It depends if we're optimizing on a national level or a local level. So if a store, for example, a furniture store, they're selling furniture online, maybe they're custom modern Italian sectionals. If they have a local presence, we might optimize for a local brick and mortar traffic. We optimize our Google business profile, we're optimizing a landing page with those keywords for that specific location. But in general, SEO, whether it's for just a regular brick and mortar store or a national e-commerce brand, the formulas that algorithms follow, I think they're still general, the same.
Fundamentals are the same.
The fundamentals are the same, and as I mentioned, it's changing so rapidly, specifically with AI, we're just trying to stay on top of the algorithms. And as you mentioned in our previous conversations, ChatGPT also has documentation how to properly build the schema of the website to make sure OpenAI reads the website properly, because OpenAI is a partnership with Bing, and when you search for OpenAI, they tap into the Bing database for results.
Which Bing has been historically ignored for probably the last 2 decades as far as search is concerned.
It's time for a comeback.
Yeah, Microsoft's the largest
Microsoft,
investor in
Bing,
OpenAI.
their version of it is called Copilot.
Yeah.
and I have a lot of Microsoft friends, even though we're on the Mac side. I don't know, you are Mac or PC?
I'm both.
You're both?
I juggle, but lean more towards Mac these days.
Yeah, we're more Mac because it's just more secured. But what I do like about Copilot is that you can set up an instance where it's a offshore, like off cloud, secured instance of AI,
Yeah.
and you can feed it private information.
Right. So
Whether
private
it's
cloud.
for healthcare or for real estate or anything like that, you can create a Copilot instance, and it's going to be a lot more secure than OpenAI ChatGPT, because that goes into a
Right.
public space.
And so, interestingly enough, you mentioned is that OpenAI recently started integrating e-commerce options, right? And so people can talk to ChatGPT and ask for advice. And I've actually tested it, and it was a great test. I gave ChatGPT a budget, and I said I want to buy a gift for my wife for our anniversary. ChatGPT obviously searched through Bing to find top ranking websites and started recommending certain products. And what I've done, and this is the interesting part, this is what the power of AI today and how it's going to dynamically change how people shop, is I submitted a picture of my wife, and ChatGPT was able to analyze everything about my wife's fashion style. She happened to have a fancy bag, the accessories, the jewelry, and based on what ChatGPT saw within an image, a totally new set of recommendations came through.
Yes.
Which was beautiful.
That's cool.
7 years ago, we were building an AI recommendation engine, product recommendation engine that was supposed to do this, but it requires massive amounts of data, which ChatGPT has obviously, and massive amounts of feedback. So now that ChatGPT can tap into e-commerce stores, this is a tremendous opportunity for e-commerce brands to start paying attention of how to reformat and optimize their internal structure, their data structure, their product enrichment, to index their websites inside ChatGPTs and alikes. And just one more point on chat, ChatGPT is not the only player in town, right? They're the first to market, but Google is making a tremendous comeback, right? This is $1 trillion company that kind of missed an opportunity. They should have been where ChatGPT is. But Google is coming back really fast and really strong with Gemini, right? And Gemini is going to start incorporating e-commerce results eventually as well. So this whole ecosystem of how people shop is going to drastically change over the years. So people have to start revisiting all of their brands, especially established brands. They have to revisit and speak to guys like yourself and understand, is their data structure correct? Is their information architecture correct? Is their product data enriched enough? And does it meet the standards of these chat systems? Well, so that you could start feeding them back into
I think we also need to consider the Google's and the main search engine's number one advice is really put the content that will be valuable for people to get 100%. Information. Even though there's so much AI tools out there to create content, we want to make it as human as possible. Right. So make it as simple as possible that will offer instant, obvious answers. So I think that's important.
I think that Shopify is going to start shifting more into heavily personalized e-commerce experiences. Shopify's been deploying new AI agents in the back end, so that as you become a shopper, you got to understand, right? Shopify is a SaaS platform. You have several million stores, but they're really one big e-commerce store. They're just separated by different instances. Right. So technically, Shopify has knowledge across all these industries, and they have access to all of the data that they can teach their AI agents. And that in the future, near future, the next releases are going to be that your shopping experience is going to be faster, smoother, and pretty much as personalized as it can get, because AI learns from data, and if you have data across the board, right? Like I don't need to learn from just your store data. I can learn from 1,000 other stores that are just like you and figure out, hey, this person, this persona likes this type of product at this particular price range. And then the system will start matching up these recommendations.
I know exactly what you're talking about. And just for the viewers that are not sure what personalization is, it's really how Netflix recommends a movie you might like, or an Amazon recommends a product based on previous purchases. So I think Shopify is on its way to also get into that space. So Yuri, we just spoke a little bit about SEO and some of the techniques we utilize for e-commerce. When it comes to the next layer of marketing and driving qualified leads to the e-commerce store, when you build a strategy, how do you utilize the paid networks? Whether it's Google pay-per-click, the meta advertising. What's the bucket for paid in your part of your strategy?
So we like to practice what we call marketing 360, which is strategically getting in front of the right audience with the right product at the right time across the board, and then nurture those customers all the way down to the sales funnel. And obviously, we spoke about product market fit. So understanding if your product matters to the market and then finding the right market is very important. How do you do it pretty fast? And paid marketing is one of those channels that allows you to get almost instant gratification to understand whether or not the audience and the product that you're trying to marry makes sense. So the goal generally on an average should be getting 3 to 4 ROAS, return on ad spend, when you're going out and marketing. Now, this is the return on your average, right? It doesn't mean that you created an ad and you posted it on Google, you posted it on Facebook or Instagram, and that ad returned a sale. Unfortunately, that's not how it works, right? There's a thing called top of funnel marketing versus bottom of the funnel. Top of funnel means we go very broad with the right messaging, targeting a broad audience, all right? And the goal of that is to narrow down from a lot of people who are potential customers down to customers that have intent of purchase. And there's certain signals of intent of purchase. Once they click on your ad, they get sent to a landing page or a product page or a category page, and then they spend time on your website. If people don't spend time on your website, they have no intention of buying from you, so we tend to ignore these people, right? We want to be very smart with how the money is being invested so that you're not just randomly spending money on remarketing. However, the people that spend time on your website, a couple of minutes exploring categories, reading through product sections, maybe even leaving their email or phone number in the subscription boxes, those are the people that have what's called high intent of purchase. Using paid marketing systems like Google, like Facebook or Meta, we're able to retarget these customers with different messaging, different offerings, and even follow them with the products that they've been looking at and paying attention, right? Statistically, you need about 15 to 22 touch points for a customer to trust to buy your brand. A touch point can be a post on social media, on Facebook or Instagram. It could be an email, it could be a text message, it could be just a banner ad, it could be a visit to your website. These touch points is what allows people to develop a digital relationship with your brand. And then when the time is right, when the product makes sense, these customers make a purchase. And so on the average, as I mentioned, our focus is generally to get you 3 to 4 ROAS on your ad spend. This way you can mathematically and systematically grow your business. So if you put in $1 and you generated $4 in sales, you know that putting in $1 million in ad spend, you're going to generate $4 million in sales, right? Building your database of consumers, right? And then continuously remarketing those consumers and expanding a broad view of new consumers. So this is a marketing 360 cycle where we continuously target, retarget, and close sales generally through email campaigns and through text messaging campaigns.
Got it. So marketing 360 is really your kind of formula to use the paid marketing advertisements. That's great. And we recently had a customer, which is a younger population from 10 to 25. We noticed that SMS messaging is really and DMs through social networks is really their playgrounds. They don't really use email. So email was not the layer of marketing that we used. And we noticed that SMS is the instant in your face messaging, same as with the SMS, whether it's iCloud messaging or Android, we can get and offer a sale right there, right now, versus an email. Would you say that's more effective way to invest into growing your database of cell phone numbers that
Absolutely.
You can message?
So, the funny thing is you can't really escape a text message, right? It's there. DMs, there's still some filtering on the DMs systems. However, there's system automation that you can incorporate where certain keywords trigger a direct message into your inbox versus into an inbox request. Anything that any way that you can reach your user through a mobile phone has a higher rate of conversions because people are on their phone on an average of like 7 hours a day. So they're glued to these platforms and you have their attention. Because marketing is what? It's a battle for attention.
Factor that we notice is the spam cam ads. You need to get very strict permissions. They have to check off that text box where they agree to get a text message.
Correct.
Because sometimes, agencies and clients get in trouble if you do have a cell phone number, if you don't get the permission.
Well, subscription boxes always help. People often miss out on an opportunity, right? Like e-commerce stores need to have subscription incentive, right? Like joining a mailing
get 10% off or something.
Getting discounts, getting certain incentives, getting promotions, and people happily will trade their email and their cell phone number in return for some sort of an incentive, especially with the brands that they really want to work with.
Exactly.
And that automatically subscribes them into your database. We tend to use Klaviyo as our distribution software. Klaviyo handles beautiful workflows and automation for email and for text, and then you can incentivize your customers for being part of the list. And very often people actually ask, well, what about, how frequent do you need to email people? Does it annoy people? Are we going to get spammy? I think email is still today one of the best tools to close online customers. And people literally get thousands of emails. So your emails, you can email your clients every day. They're only going to pay attention when it matters.
If it's a trusted brand and you offer a high enough incentive, people are going to react on it. They're going to go to the website and buy the product.
Right.
They already purchased before. They're thinking about purchasing in the future. If you give them a great offer and a deal, time-sensitive offer, I think I have done it myself. I'm going about my day, I get an email like, hey, up to 40% off, I jump on it.
Right, and email is literally communicating directly to you, right? Just like SMS, just like DMs, it's not an ad, right? This is your bottom funnel. This is the final stretch where I'm talking to you one-on-one, where I could personalize your email specifically for who you are. I could, you could personalize your name. I could personalize the product you've been looking at. I can give you a specific incentive, specific discount for buying that particular product. So email is super powerful, okay? And I truly advise that people don't sleep on emails, and it's okay to, email your customers as often as you want, as long as you give them the non-subscribe option. But generally, people they'll ignore anything that's not relevant, and they only pay attention to things that matter, or when there's a really great incentive to close them out.
You kind of dived into a little bit about some of this, but when we focus on reputation management, specifically for e-commerce brands, we really put a lot of weight on the reviews. For example, Trustpilot or similar sites. With your clients, how do you tackle that? If it's a new brand and they're not well known yet, they don't have any reviews.
Right.
What's your strategy to get more reviews?
Reviews are phenomenal. Reviews are very much encouraged. But when it comes to e-commerce, I'm a big believer in focusing on product reviews, particularly in a video format, which plays very well in what's trending today, things like social selling. Having people, review products, talk about the function, the feature, the beauty, the relevance, the size of each product, whether it's big or small, and how it is to be used and applied in everyday life, people truly appreciate that more because it's a real person that's giving you real feedback. Now, TikTok Shop's been blowing up, right? You have a ton of live sellers and social commerce happening right now. And, I do want to actually touch base a little bit on influencer marketing. But before we jump into that, I'm a big believer that brands that create and sell their own products should be their own influencers, first and foremost. They should be able to sell a product online as if they're selling it in person, right? And a great example of it is QVC. Somebody like QVC's been around for 50 years, maybe more. And they've been selling hundreds of millions of dollars of products through television. And they've done it by literally showing you the product, talking about the product, letting you know, all the benefits of it, all the usability of the product, right? Today with the internet, you can do this globally. And what you were mentioning with AI coming in, with live translations coming out, you can start selling products globally in different languages, right? There's so many tools out there today that will translate your videos into different languages pretty well. So that opens up bigger markets. But when you're trying to get more exposure, we believe that influencer marketing is a great way to tap into an audience you have not touched. And I know you guys are very strong with influencer marketing, and I'd love to understand, how does that process work? How do you find the right influencer? What are the measurements of success that you go by to pick somebody? And then what's a good, what do you consider a good influencer campaign?
So the latest example of an influencer activation that we had is a fitness influencer. When we're looking for the right influencer, we kind of look at the metrics. We don't just look at the followers. They could have thousands, millions of followers. We really look at the comment section. Are people engaging? Are people asking the right questions? Because based on the community, that's how we pick the influencer.
So are there like marketplaces where you could find an influencer?
There is a couple marketplaces, kind of like influencer broker houses that we utilize. But what we have found before, most effective way is just going through the community of local influencers. When we search for hashtags, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or TikTok, we can tell which influencers are trending, which ones get the most views and the most engagement. But if you're just starting from scratch, you can just Google influencer marketplaces. There's several of them, and you can pick. But we have a set of influencers based on which industry we're working with. For influencers in the fitness industry, we have hired this girl who has millions of followers. She promotes clothing, product, supplements. In the case of a local, yoga studio, for example. We hired an influencer who was into fitness and Pilates and yoga, and she went around asking, and she went around doing content utilizing the proper techniques when it comes to yoga. But the brand, an athletic brand, have hired her to promote the natural organic products that she was wearing within her exercise. And when people are looking at it, they're noticing what is she wearing, and they start asking questions. That's why it's important when we go into the questions, into the comment section, we notice that people are actually engaging. They don't really ask her like, "Oh, you look great today. What's your makeup routine? What's your skin routine?" We specifically brought her in to market the clothing, and that's where we kind of put the sale and the call to action to drive to the e-commerce website. But sometimes we do testing with influencers. It could be a hit or miss. So just like with any marketing, it's a lot of experimentation, A/B testing.
Right. How do they get paid generally?
Paid?
Yeah.
So influencers can be paid like a flat fee to do a real promotion. Some influencers, if they're like a high-end influencer, they can be paid as an affiliate, like a percentage of the sales. Really depends on the level of affiliates and the influencers.
If you had to put everything on a scale, you have SEO, you have influencer marketing, social selling, paid marketing, email marketing, text messaging. From your perspective, strategy-wise, for an e-commerce brand, where should majority of the focus be? Where should the priority of the focus be?
Great question, Yuri, and I think you know the answer to that. But when we launch a website, we kind of first 3 months to 6 months, we focus on the basics, making sure the product, the data is enriched, making sure the base product is exported to the third-party marketplaces, Google Shopping, whether it's eBay or Walmart, specific Amazon type places. And then once you start getting organic orders, this is where you can supplement it with strategic paid campaigns for Facebook ads, for Instagram ads. And if you have a budget for it, sponsoring products on Google is really, from my experience, top of the layers.
100%.
What about you? What do you guys think?
So again, we like to figure this part out based on the outcomes the client wants, right? You brought up a great point, right? There's ways to organically measure how well your product does in the market by utilizing third-party marketplaces, right? You could get on Target, on Walmart, on Amazon, on eBay, right? You could literally fill up the stores that have an audience. And for those that don't know, all of these marketplaces take a commission, right? So it's still a cost of marketing. You just pay it on the back end rather than the front end. What you are sacrificing is data ownership. That's the difference. However, it's a lower risk and you're able to acquire customers. And so if you notice that your products are reacting well on these marketplaces, then you can invest into paid marketing and start promoting sales off of your website, off of your presence. For brands that are established and want to see more results faster, we would essentially flip the switch, right? We would target paid marketing campaigns through Google, through Facebook.
Off the bat, right? If they have the budgets, then you can go
because
serious.
If their goal is instant gratification, we know that our product sells, we know that there are customers for our product, then it's just our job to find those customers, and we could do that through the paid channels.
It just kind of, you create a shortcut to success.
Correct.
If the client is an established brand, like you mentioned, you recommend a budget, you do a testing, and then you just turn on the switch, and more customers come in. So that's a great point, Yuri. We covered so many great topics: e-commerce, AI, influencer marketing, strategy development. thanks for coming on the show. And
pleasure.
good to
I
see you in
appreciate
Miami.
it. We should do this again soon.
We will.
Thanks so much, Dennis.
Thank you. If you like this content, please like and subscribe to my channel, because we're going to be producing a lot more podcasts. I'm going to be bringing on guests, not just from Miami area, but nationwide. And we're going to cover a lot of interesting topics about business, lifestyle, real estate, events. Stay tuned, a lot more coming.